that dirt. It gets all up in your nails and it just hurts sometimes when you try to. Anyway, but baseball starts tomorrow, and I will do this or I'll do this type of show every time a sports league starts up. I'll do one on the NFL. I'll do one on the NBA, MLB, NHL. I'll do a lot on most of the ones that I do know, but I will do this show every time league starts up, and I won't do it at the beginning of preseason. I'll do it at the start of the regular season. So it is time for the baseball show. So if you don't like baseball, so this is not your show for you. This is baseball restricted. I will be doing my predictions, my look aheads, my MVPs, my Cy Youngs, my Silver Sluggers, all these different things, and what's to look forward for this year, because it's going to be a busy year. Bryce Harper in a um, new stadium. He's in Philly. Mike Trout. We'll see how he starts up after getting paid so much money. It's going to be fun to see what happens this year. So I'm anxiously awaiting. As y'all might have known, I'm an Astro fan, born and raised in Houston, Texas. Been a Stros fan since my entire life. I was there during the '05 World Series and was there during the 17 World Series. And, been a fan even in between when they were a 100-loss team. Knew, stats and players right off the bat. Watched every game that I could. They were on the Comcast TV network, and I know most of y'all don't really know and care about that. But as much as I could watch them, I tried to watch them, and they're finally on a channel that I can watch, so I'm happy. But that is my favorite team, the Astros. So y'all can have your favorite team, and we'll fight about it. But the Astros are mine, and they look to be pretty good this year. They lost a few pitching prospects, and Charlie Morton, and maybe Dallas Keuchel as well. Lance McCullers will be out, I think, with Tommy John surgery all season long, so he's questionable. They still have Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander, so they still do have two very good pieces that were there, and that they find another guy in there, and I'm pretty sure they've got a top prospect, I think in Forrest or something like that, that can come up from bottom. So the Astros love their potential, but I don't want to get too much into that, because we got 32 teams to go through today, as the MLB season starts tomorrow, and I am excited. And I will be spending my whole day after the show just watching baseball all day long. And it'll be a fun day filled with events. We got a good game at the end, as I've covered in on the Monday show, Boston, Seattle. I'm very anxious to see that one. But, let's get into this. Let's go start out with the AL East. We have the Boston Red Sox, Toronto, New York, Baltimore, and Tampa, all in that division. And the AL East last few years has been run by the Red Sox and Yankees. But, props up to the Yankees. They played free agency pretty well this year, and they got a few key pieces. Not pieces like Giancarlo Stanton that they got last year, but I'm talking pieces that will fit this team. And, I think the Yankees, first off, will definitely be able to pull through over the Boston Red Sox and be able to win their AL East title back again. But that rotation is still a question mark in that. They definitely have hitting. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm gonna have to look him up. But they do have Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge, and they have that catcher that I don't remember quite who it is. Let me look at that. believe it's Sanchez, but I'm not too sure. Yeah, Gary Sanchez, Miguel Aguilar, Torres. They got Bird and Folds and Troy Tulowitzki. So Troy Tulowitzki definitely did have a struggling years in Toronto, but he's still a prime factor. He did put up some pretty good stats last year, but hey, he's the 9 hole in the projected lineups, and he could be a pretty good X factor for his team if they need him. He can definitely um, he can definitely be a pretty good player. He had a 333 average last year, so um, or no, that's Luke Volt. Sorry, I'm not reading that right. He did not play last season because he was injured, and he's still a pretty good factor for them. So I would really like to see him rebirth as a Yankee now. So they got 3 pretty good guys, and Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, and Troy Tulowitzki. They also have Aaron Hicks, who's a pretty good outfielder in center field. So they do have that. And one of their main problems I was talking about is their pitching. Severino, definitely, I think I did hear that he was going to be out for a little bit. CC Sabathia is definitely a question mark still. James Paxton can never stay healthy. They also got J.A. Happ, who's a pretty solid pitcher. So, but all these guys have never been key, or they've been key, but they've never been healthy. So they do have talent in that rotation, but they do not have the health in that rotation. So it's going to be a key thing. They did have 100 wins last year. Can they improve on that and win the AL East title? They're my prediction to win it. But as we move on to another team that could possibly run the Yankees off that table is the Boston Red Sox. They didn't really add too much from their World Series title, but they kept the same pieces. They still got Benintendi, Betts, Martinez, Bogarts, Moreland, Pedroia, Devers, Bradley, and Vasquez all in that lineup. And just like the Astros a few years ago that they were talking about, they are 1 through 9, very deep, very mobile, and they can definitely hurt you on the offensive end. Obviously, their rotation, besides Chris Sale, maybe David Price on a good night, is still a little bit of a question mark. Porcello, Eovaldi, and Rodriguez, they're definite, key pieces, but they're not, 1 or 2 starters on really any rotation unless you're on like maybe the Florida Marlins team that they're not even that good, but there's still pieces there that they can probably fill. You could probably see Boston in the trade deadline maybe make a big huge move maybe for Chris Sale or David Price because both their contracts are coming up soon. Greg Kimbrell definitely left last year, so that hurts them in a lot of different ways. So Matt Barnes will definitely have to be their closer, and the Red Sox, they're still a perennial powerhouse, but they still have the Yankees to fight out for the top, and also another team that could possibly be in that race is the Tampa Bay Rays, who added a pretty good pitcher in Charlie Morton. But the question is, will Charlie Morton be able to pitch like his Astro days? And we both know that sometimes, a player goes to a team and he, starts winning again, and then he leaves for more money, and he ends up falling again, mostly just because the team has good stuff. Obviously, Charlie Morton struggled in Pittsburgh, and now he was in a good situation in Houston. Now he's in Tampa. We'll see if he can improve, and we'll see him, and I'll see him this weekend against the Astros, probably on Friday when they play in Tampa. So, he's still a pretty good pitcher. He's pretty old, but Charlie Morton definitely deserves that contract. And the Tampa Bay Rays definitely has young assets, but they definitely do have questionable assets as well. They did put up 90 wins last year. They were third, just out of the AL East title, but they are predicted third in the AL East title this year. But they could be a possible dark horse in that region. So keep an eye on the Tampa Bay Rays. But the Blue Jays, they got Vladimir Guerrero, but they still are missing quite a few pieces. But they did add that piece with Vladimir Guerrero. He is a definite power hitter, a good person at that third base spot. But they still got a lot of question marks on that roster, and a lot of guys that could possibly blossom or fail. But that Vladimir Guerrero will be definitely a guy that everyone will want to watch when Toronto comes to their town, and their rotation is some question marks, I think, still there. A lot of question marks in this league for pitching, at least. The AL East is not known for dominant pitching. But Marcus Stroman and Aaron Sanchez at the top, and then you have two lefties and a righty in the back end of your rotation. But Marcus Stroman is a pretty good pitcher, and Aaron Sanchez has had his moments. But the Toronto Blue Jays, after going 73 and 89, definitely will not fall below 73 wins. I don't think they'll definitely probably be at the same amount, maybe one or two lower or one or two higher. They might be even 10 higher with the addition of Vladimir Guerrero if he definitely does play pretty well. But there's still some doubts on that. But as we move along into now the AL Central, the Chicago White Sox, the Cleveland Indians, the Kansas City Royals, the Detroit Tigers, and obviously the Minnesota Twins, who I'm also not really happy with because they stole Marwin Gonzalez from me. But I will get into that. Starting off with the Chicago White Sox, they did get Alonso. Yonder Alonso, he will be a DH for them, and this is a growing team with Jose Abreu, Yalmer Sanchez, and Yonder Alonso, but they do have question marks in that lineup and definite potential in that lineup with Alonso and Abreu. Alonso being a left-hander and Abreu being right. Abreu is one of the youngest and best first basemen in the league, and if he stays healthy, and so does Alonso, they could definitely improve on that 62 win season and maybe not lose 100 games for 100 games for the second straight season. So keep an eye on the White Sox. They definitely have potential to break through, but they definitely still have some pieces to figure out. So watching them maybe make a trade in the middle of the season, just in case they don't. Maybe they find a good trade for Jose Abreu or something. They're still rebuilding and stuff, so it'll be fun to see the White Sox get back on their foot and be like the 05 White Sox that I saw destroy my Astros in the World Series. But the Cleveland Indians is the next team that we're going to be talking about. Francisco Lindor, obviously one of the greatest shortstops in the game today. He is pretty young, and this team just keeps staying steady at the 90 to 100 win years. They had a 91 win season last year, and they could possibly, if the trades go right, they are they want to move some pieces. The Indians said in the middle of the season that they want to, move them while in the middle of the season and still contending for the championship. So we'll see if they can do that and keep that chemistry well. And if they do, they probably could maybe hit 100 again, like they did 2 years ago with 102 wins in 2017. But Jose Ramirez and Carlos Santana, definite pieces that will need to be watched for the Cleveland Indians in that regards. But next up for the last place, and probably will be last place again, the Detroit Tigers. Can they improve off of a 64-98 record and not be a laughing stock in the AL Central? And can they get maybe a trade for Miguel Cabrera, who's on his last leg, or maybe he retires, or do something, because they are strapped for money. The Detroit Tigers definitely will definitely need to be, keeping an eye out for trades for Miguel Cabrera or Nicholas Castellanos, and I believe there's one more. It's Jordan Zimmerman. So a lot of huge contracts that they're probably going to need to move sooner or later to finish or to start rebuilding. I mean, because you're not going to, win any more titles with Miguel Cabrera still on the roster. So Detroit Tigers fans, I'm sorry, you're not going to win one more with Miguel Cabrera. So give Miguel a chance to, be on a contending team. But they're definitely not going to be contending anytime soon as we move into the next team, the Kansas City Royals, who lost Salvador Perez for a little bit of time. I'm not sure if it's a season-ending injury, but there are a lot of question marks on this Kansas City Royals team, and they hope to not stay in almost dead last. They had a 58 and 104 losses last year, but this team, has potential, and they have potential in a small way, but potential, nonetheless. And you could see the Royals go under 100-loss season, and that's not unlikely. I kind of set them right at 63 wins, maybe, and they're gonna miss Perez. They're gonna miss Salvi, obviously, but. And also, if you want me to go back in depth on a lot of these teams, y'all can hit me up on Twitter at Jacob Steiner, and y'all can ask me questions about the team and what y'all think all these teams should do. And but as we move on, the Minnesota Twins, I don't like anymore. I don't like the Minnesota Twins anymore. They stole Marwin Gonzalez, a key piece. If he plays the way he did in Houston with a .317 batting or on-base percentage, batting average, and then a .333 on-base percentage with a almost 400 slugging percentage, and he had 20 home runs, I think. But if they keep doing that, and they keep playing the way they do, or the way they did last year with 78 wins, and they stay healthy, they could possibly make a run for that first spot against the Cleveland Indians. So keep an eye on the Minnesota Twins. They're going to be pretty good this year. Obviously, being healthy is the key for them. So as we move into the now AL West with the Rangers, Astros, Angels, Seattle Mariners, and Oakland Athletics. We start off with my boys, the Houston Astros, who did lose quite a few pieces, but they're still a pretty good dominant team. Definitely question marks in that rotation. They moved Colin McHugh up from the bullpen, so we'll see how he does. Um, and then they have Valdez and Josh James. Josh James is a highly regarded prospect, and we'll see if he can improve. But the Astros definitely have a lot of question marks on that roster, with losing Dallas Keuchel and Lance McCullers. Well, not losing Lance McCullers, but they lost him due to injury, and lost Marwin Gonzalez, their utility man. But if they stay healthy, they have a pretty good shot of going back to the World Series and maybe repeating on what they could have, or what they did on 2017. But they have slowly improved on the amount of wins from 101 in 2017 to 103, and there's still room for improvement. If they stay healthy, they could probably hit 105 wins this year, slowly improving that record by 2 every year. And as we move on to Los Angeles Angels, who just probably will go bankrupt here soon with the addition of Mike Trout to that roster of a almost like 300 million, or I think that's 300 million dollar deal, a huge deal for him, and a stellar one at that. But the Angels will probably be right where they usually are, right in the middle of the AL West, or at the bottom. Obviously, they didn't really add too many pieces, and Albert Pujols is still getting a little older, but they still have a lot of question marks, and they signed also Matt Harvey as well, so they can be pretty good, but I wouldn't expect them to be anything special. Shohei Ohtani is still going to be a key factor to watch this season. Mike Trout obviously will probably run for MVP once again. And as we move on to the next team, in the Oakland Athletics, the Oakland Athletics shocked the world last year, moving into second place with a 97-65 record. They almost cracked 100 wins, and they could probably crack it this year as well. They didn't really add too many pieces this offseason, which is pretty sad. I thought they would, but this is a Moneyball team again. Hopefully they can figure out how to win with the Moneyball system and win 100 games, and maybe move into the playoffs, deep into the playoffs, and play into the World Series, and hopefully, we'll see an Oakland World Series finally, after they've been vacant for quite a while. Chris Davis, a guy to watch in that. Also, the Seattle Mariners are next. The Seattle Mariners, they have been a question mark for the past few years. They start out strong, and then they don't finish at all. They lost James Paxton, who is a key rotation guy for them. So, they're still got Felix Hernandez and Kikuchi and Gonzalez, and LeBlanc and Leake, but they're still a power team. They got Kyle Seager, Jay Bruce, Malik Smith, Mitch Haniger, Edwin Encarnacion is a good addition as well. But they got, they're still going to try to find themselves in the season. Without a strong rotation, I don't find them competing for the AL West. But if they find a piece in the trade deadline and they stay relevant to the trade deadline, they could probably make some noise and make a playoff push. But the next team that will probably be dead last in the AL West is the Texas Rangers. The Rangers, obviously, man, it's been a while since the 2016 season when they put up 95 wins. But this Rangers team's, they're going to be struggling for a little bit, but they are definitely, have the room for potential and room to grow. especially with that new ballpark. They're going to be recruiting like hell um, during the off seasons, and they could possibly in the next few years make a run at the playoffs. But as it stands right now, they're probably not going to do it. So they're probably going to be fifth this year and maybe a 100-loss team. But as we move into the National League, in the National League East, the Atlanta Braves, obviously with Acuna, oh wait, yeah, Ronaldo Acuna Jr. and Freddie Freeman, Josh Donaldson, and Brian McCann back in that Braves uniform. They also do have a little bit of a question mark, and who doesn't really anymore in their rotation, but it's definitely is still a young, strong rotation. They played well at home and on the road last year. They also put up 90 wins. This is a team that can definitely win the AL East this year, and they could make some noise in the playoffs as well. So they could possibly win 100 games this year. And as we move into the next team, or we move into the next team in this AL East or NL East, the Miami Marlins changing their uniform and their logo. Once again, I like this one better. Obviously, the last one was god awful. It's a whole bunch of rainbows, just disgusting. But they were terrible last year, and they're going to be terrible this year. This is not a team that will. The teams that will never have a sellout this year, and they're going to be that team. They bought the Miami Marlins park, and it's just been vacant ever since. This is a team that needs a little bit new juice, and maybe that new juice is changing those ugly uniforms and, moving on to something better. But as we move on to the next team that probably will be right next to the Miami Marlins in last place, the New York Mets, who signed Jacob deGrom to that big, huge deal a few days ago. So they solidified their starter for the opening day. And, he's still a pretty good pitcher, has his moments. But the Mets, they're a dark horse. But, we've been saying this for quite a while, that the Mets could, surprise some teams, and they could be contending for the AL or for the NL East, and all of a sudden they don't. They just fall flat. They just put their head up their ass and just keep moving. They're not. It's sad. It's sad to see that the Mets just can't get their head out of their ass and just move. The AL East was for the taking a few years ago when the Braves were bad, where the Phillies were bad, the Nationals were struggling. They had that for the grasp, but then they didn't do it. But they did make the World Series a few years ago in 2015 when they were 90-win season. So, congrats to them. But for the past few years, we thought they would be pretty good, but they are not. So obviously still some question marks there in their lineup. But hopefully they'll get fixed. On to the Philadelphia Phillies, who, definitely has potential after putting up 80 and 82 last year. They were strong at the beginning, fell off kind of towards the end, but the Phillies adding Bryce Harper at a huge deal. They're obviously not going to get Mac Trout next season as what they kind of hope for, but the Phillies will most likely move into first place or second place, and they'll definitely could be at the running for 100 wins if Bryce Harper does not go on one of his slumps this year. So the Phillies will definitely be a key team to watch there. They play at the Braves to start out the season. That was a game to watch on Monday for tomorrow. So that's going to be fun to see. The Washington Nationals still have Max Scherzer, and they just barely went above 500 last year. This is a team that has been consistently at the top of the AL or NL East for a while, but they are not going to be at the top this year at all. I mean, they're definitely going to be strong in the pitching rotation with Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, Patrick Corbin, Anibal Sanchez, and Joe Ross. But that lineup is still a question mark, and can they stay healthy for the first time in a while? So the Washington Nationals, who actually had the same record at home as on the road at 41 and 40 and 41 and 40, can the Nationals still prevail without their superstar and Bryce Harper? That will be a question mark to see. But as we move now into the NL Central, the Chicago Cubs, obviously, still reeling after that big World Series run. But the Cubs definitely do have some competition in the division this year, with the Cardinals improving with their new manager after last year, and the Brewers still improving and still gaining prospect after prospect after a while. So the Cubs are definitely going to have a lot to deal with, but they still have Jason Hayward, Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez, Kyle Schwarber, Wilson Contreras. I mean, that's all you need to say about that roster. It's just really good. But the Chicago Cubs definitely, I think, will fight for a wild card this year with either the Milwaukee Brewers or the St. Louis Cardinals. And we move now into the Cincinnati Reds, who are the next team up and who will definitely probably be at the bottom, if not the Pirates. But the Cincinnati Reds, we haven't seen in a while do pretty good. But man, I would love for them to finally get their heads out of their ass and move some shit. Go. Let's do something, because the Reds have been stagnant at 60 or below 70 wins since 2015. But 2014 they did have 76 wins. That was at the end of their good days. But they still have some pretty good players. Joey Votto, they traded for Yasiel Puig. So, I mean, they still have some pretty good players, but the Reds will definitely be at the bottom again for them. But Eugenio Suarez could be a pretty good addition as well. He is a young, talented freshman young, talented player for the team, or for the Cincinnati Reds. He had a .283 batting average last year. So, I mean, pretty good. That's pretty good. But the Milwaukee Brewers, the Brewsters, are the next team. They have Christian Yelich. They still have Ryan Braun, even after his steroids. That's what it's called. Tested positive for steroids a few years ago, but this Brewers team has been on a steady incline, not a decline, steady incline for the past few years. The Brewers have a deep lineup of Lorenzo Cain, Christian Yelich, Travis Shaw, Ryan Braun, Jesus Aguilar. They have Eric Cantz. I mean, they have a lot of pieces in there. They also have Eric Timus on the bottom of that bench. And this is a deep team. Can the Brewers possibly peak above 100 wins this year after going 96 and 67 last year? They could be first in that conversation, or first place in that conversation in the NL Central. And now as we move on to the Pittsburgh Pirates, who surprisingly went 82 and 79 last year, but the Pirates definitely will not be able to make that 82 and 79 mark. I mean, the Pirates, I just want to cheer for them. I mean, those jerseys are pretty nice. I like the Pirates jerseys. I like the Pirates Stadium. Don't like I'm not going to cheer for the team, but they're not a hated team. When you take a look back at the history, they're not a hated team. I mean, when the Pirates and the Cardinals were in a wild card, I was like, hey, hate both of these teams, but let's go Pirates. Rather cheer for the Pirates than the St. Louis Cardinals. Rather cheer for the Pirates against the Miami Marlins. I would rather cheer for Pirates against a lot of teams because they're not really a hated team. They haven't done really anything that makes you just say, yeah, I remember the Pirates. They suck. I hate the Pirates. No, they haven't done anything wrong, but the Pirates won't do anything right this year. Going probably in last place. They're going down. But the St. Louis Cardinals, as always, the consistent. They are the bar in the NL Central when it comes to baseball, and probably once again they will be again. They were 88 and 74 last year, but they probably will hit 100 wins this year, and it will be a good year for St. Louis Cardinals, probably winning the NL Central if the Cubbies or the Milwaukee Brewers don't have something to say about that. And as we move into the NL West, we start off with the Diamondbacks, who, they're not the Diamondback team of a few years ago, but they are the inconsistent Diamondbacks team that they've always been. The team that just comes out of nowhere, or the team that just falls completely apart, but they are not going to be able to be that great in the great this year, because the NL West is deep. And starting off with that NL West being deep, we go with the Colorado Rockies, who have, besides their Todd Helton days, they have put up a pretty good roster with Charlie Blackmon, Ian Desmond, Daniel Murphy, Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story. I mean, Trevor Story is a pretty good player, and he's down, below the middle of that lineup. And, on a lot of rosters, he would be at the top. He would be a, leadoff hitter. He has a power hitter as well. So the Rockies can definitely move up on that and maybe take the AL West, or the NL West. I keep saying the AL. And definitely improve on that 91 win season. But the Rockies have been steadily improving since 2014. They had 66 wins that year and have grown in wins ever since then. But as we move on to the next team, we got probably the favorite in the NL West to win this division with Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers, who went 92 and 71 last year, who were almost tied for first place with the Colorado Rockies. That was a pretty interesting season last year. They are definitely the favorite, and definitely a favorite to go back to the World Series once again for the third straight time. Can they do it? How many World Series titles do you think the Dodgers will go to before they actually win one is the question. But I after seeing last year, unless they're facing the Astros, I would like the Dodgers to win. I just want the Dodgers to finally win one. They deserve one. They've been playing pretty good. They just played against pretty good AL teams. But definitely could be a team to watch. But the Padres, they're a team to watch as well. They added, I believe they added a piece that I've just completely and utterly have just lost my mind, but it will come up, and I will tell you on the next podcast. Who they signed. It was a pretty good name, but they still have Ian Kinsler, Eric Hosmer in that team. This is definitely a team that could go middle of the road in that AL or NL West. They definitely have improved from a few years ago, but this team is definitely still not able to contend, but I would love to see a Padres in a few years to make a playoff run. That's definitely in their future. A team that is still struggling in the San Francisco Giants, who, I mean, we thought a few years ago, or 2 years ago, I think it was, that they would make the World Series because, they were skipping every other year, that they would go to the World Series, win it. It seemed like, but then they just completely fell off. They were last place, and they were last place again, and they probably will be last place this year. Not a lot of pieces. They're definitely, struggling in that rotation. Besides Madison Bumgarner, but maybe they could, if they don't do very well, maybe they could possibly look for a trade for some of their key pieces like Buster Posey, Brandon Belt, Evan Longoria, and Madison Bumgarner. You could probably see them make a trade for that. And we'll see what happens in the MLB season. This has been the MLB. This has been the MLB review. I'm sorry. So get ready for the MLB starting tomorrow, and I will see y'all tomorrow as well. Don't y'all forget that the Wake and Bake show will be on Friday morning, so stay tuned for that one.